Hi, my name is Luljeta Zenka, and for about 3 years now, I wrote about comic book characters, and so I wanted to challenge myself, and I decided to do a memoir about my bonding experience with my grandmother. And my amazing mentor, Liz Carroll, helped me with it, and I'm really proud of it since it's like my first piece. Those torturous knitting lessons that I survived. In those moments of ruined concentration, and oh, or frickin' hell, what slipped through my lips. I look back to those days and think, damn, I was an angry 10-year-old. Well, I had good reason to be. I had to knit with my grandmother. No, not that grandmother, the one who bakes cookies all the time or gives you money for no special reason, but the one who decides to teach her 10-year-old granddaughter how to knit. I honestly don't know who started the whole debacle. Was it me who went to her about learning, or was it her who made the decision to teach me? If you ask me, by the way, I like to think she had full liability in the situation. Either way, I ended up spending hours sitting next to her, cramped up on a living room couch, carefully making socks every single day. Oh, and no, she wasn't the nicest teacher at all. If I let her examine my work, she'd find a mistake, undo the whole thing, and then throw the string at me and say, start again. I remember wanting to cry during those hours of utter failure, not from sadness or disappointment in myself, but from frustration with a certain senior citizen. But instead of crying or at least yelling at her, I would just stare with that expression, the one that said, I cannot believe you just did that. She would just look at me, her Steve Urkel glasses sitting low on her nose, and say, either start or I'll hurt you. In the end, I lost the glaring competitions we had because, to be quite honest, she could hurt me, and I didn't want to take any chances. So I resumed my work, screaming internally as I poked my middle fingers and everything. And she kept to hers. We would stay silent. Animal Planet always played in the background. That was the only channel she could watch where she'd understand what was going on without having to understand English. And it irritated me to no end because she knew I didn't like that channel and she kept it there. And no matter how much I whined about it or how much I hated to knit, I still kept going on for some reason. It was like something pushed me forward even when I pushed back. Now, I've only been talking about the annoying stuff that happened during those hours of making socks. Sure, there were some good times. Like how my grandmother motivated me with snacks from the cabinet where my mother kept all the good junk food. After an hour of knitting silently, she'd pause, sigh, put the knitting needles to the side, and struggle to get up from her awkward pose on the couch in order to waddle into the kitchen. She'd come back with a box of cookies or a package of some weird European treat, and after eating half of it, she'd pass it to me before resuming her work. And while we sat there on the old, ugly couch in my living room, my grandmother with her short black hair pushed back with some old headband that she kept in her house, it was like legit like 10 years old, and me munching on some cookies and creating a mess, we worked to some messed up kind of rhythm. Her hands expertly and smoothly made tiny click noises, while I awkwardly made clack noises. And to the music of those clicks and clacks, she'd tell me stories. Some religious tales, some traditional fables, and sometimes even gossip. Her voice was always rough and crackling, a trait my uncle tells me I inherited from her. She'd pause every now and then to remember what happened next because she swore, for the life of her, that she had an excellent memory and didn't know why she couldn't remember the next line of the story. I laughed and snorted at the right parts, and even sometimes I wouldn't pay attention on purpose, so then she could poke me with one of her extra knitting needles. It would hurt like hell, but it was worth it. And I would grin cheekily because it was hilarious to see how her nose flared and her eyes widened. If I tried to stop because my fingers were cramped and pink from being poked too much, she'd make me go on, poking me in the shoulder and telling me that if I didn't continue, she would hurt me. So I continue, and when I got enough courage every now and then, I would speak up and add a sarcastic comment. She would pause mid-sentence after hearing my little quip and stare at me out of the corner of her eye, her dark eyes looking into my very soul. But instead of murdering me, she would only chuckle and shake her head before continuing her knitting, talking under her breath about how if I was her child, she'd teach me a lesson. I pretended I didn't hear and went back to work with the same crooked grin my whole family has. I wouldn't say I enjoyed the knitting, but I did feel gratitude for my grandmother. The fact that she wanted to waste her time and teach me something my mom should have taught me was just astounding. The fact that she kept pushing me even though I wanted to throw the knitting supplies out of the damn window was pretty cool. I gave up knitting when I was around 11 after a failed weaving experiment. So I stopped those little sessions with my grandmother. Those days of knitting are over, but nothing can stop the connection I made with that crazy lady. It took me the course of a year and a half to realize that that damn voice in the back of my head telling me the consequences of my actions or trying to motivate me to do more was my grandmother's voice. So now as I sit down at my computer and come up with excuses as to why I'm not writing, I could feel her poking me in the brain and telling me that she'll give me a good ass whooping if I don't continue. And while we don't bond over the knitting, we do have another shared hobby, playing cards, where, for the sake of the game, dirty looks, taunts, and name-calling are totally fine, unlike knitting.